Welcome. I'm Jamie Tyler, your energy esthetician, and this is the Love Aligned podcast. So today, I'm going to be talking about boundaries. I feel like boundaries are very important, and not only important, they're super healing for us, especially when we feel like people are always crossing our boundaries or whatever it may be. So important. But I just have to go and start with this. I made a post back a while ago asking, do you ever feel sad or bad for something that you love? And the post was all about myself. I feel sad for the inner child or the child version of myself. And why? Because I love who I am now. Why couldn't I have loved who I was then? Why did I allow people's feelings or thoughts or them not seeing my true talents and my beautiful gifts? Why, knowing what I know now, wouldn't I love her, right? Let her know how beautiful she is. And the truth is, because when we are younger, we don't understand. And we just want our parents' approval or our loved ones' approval or the teachers, just all those around us. And if we don't get their approval or we're not feeling it, it closes that child down, makes them feel no love, like they're not seen. So keep in mind, I will be posting a lot about my journey, and this is just part of it. But now I see her, I believe in her, and I know now that I don't need to be the center of attention like others feel they need to be. And there was a lot of that when I was growing up, or just being in the spotlight, or whatever it may be, right? We just all need other people who believe in us and who believe in themselves, and then we can rise together. And that's how our vibrations rise, by healing and loving who we are seeing, who we are now, right? And talking to ourselves back then and bringing it into present. When we take people with us and help heal them, we are raising our vibrations. One thing I do as an esthetician is give my secrets away. I will have fellow estheticians that will call me or text me and ask me questions about things like, how did you do this? And I want to know how you do this, or how do you make this or make that, right? I have no problem giving them my secrets or telling them what I'm doing. If they want to know about product I'm using or the way I'm doing it, certain services, whatever it may be, I look at it this way. They are not my competition, right? We are allies. We are all on the same team. And I want to see them succeed because their success brings me success. So with that said, you need to limit the amount of time and energy you give to other people. Instead, find ways to protect and restore your energy. So for me, writing is therapeutic. I find I can say things in writing. I'm definitely able to verbalize to others. Seeing my truth on paper is the ultimate form of validation for me. I no longer needed to be perfect. I gave myself permission to be authentic and honored every feeling that came up. So one thing is I'm going to ask, do you have trouble establishing healthy emotional boundaries? Right? Think about that. And then I'm going to ask some questions. This is something I found that was actually adapted from a man named Charles Whitfield. And he has, it's called Boundaries in Relationships, Knowing, Protecting, and Enjoying the Self. So the way you would answer these questions that I would ask would be with either never, seldom, occasionally, often, or usually. So if you need a pause at any time to write these down and really just do the work, feel free to do that. But the first thing you want to ask or answer, right? I feel as if my happiness depends on other people. So you'd write that down and then answer it with never, seldom, occasionally, often, or usually. I would rather attend to others than attend to myself. I spend my time and energy helping others so much that I neglect my own wants and needs. I tend to take on the moods of people close to me. I am overly sensitive to criticism. I tend to get caught up in other people's problems. I feel responsible for other people's feelings. And then look at your answers. If you answered often or usually to any of the above statements at all, this might be an indication that you have trouble establishing healthy emotional boundaries. Like me, you're probably extremely affected by the emotions and energy of the people and spaces around you. At times, it can be incredibly hard to distinguish between your stuff and other people's stuff. So think about this. Boundaries. What's mine and what's not, right? What are you carrying that's yours and what are you carrying that are other people's? Also, are you or are they triggered? So who's triggered, you or them, when they hear or read or listen to something else someone else posts or says? Instead of overthinking it and thinking it's about you or someone else, you should really just sit with it. Is this really about me or is this about what I'm feeling because I was triggered? Right? So creating emotional boundaries, what energy or thoughts are you letting in? Are you letting it in good? Are you letting it in bad? Or are you just the observer? We don't have to spin out when we get triggered. Sit with it for just a minute. Just sit with it and try to understand that we all have the same type of emotion. We all have the same type of experience. It's just in a different way, and we experience them differently. And a huge thing, huge, huge, huge. Don't take responsibility for others and the way they choose to take it or understand it. I am not taking responsibility, just like you should never take responsibility for what other people think or feel about something that you're going through. You should never take responsibility for how other people perceive something that you say, write about, or whatever it may be. 1,000% it's them. If you are writing or saying something or talking, right, and they think it's about them or can relate or they think it's about someone else, guess what? They're holding on to guilt. That means they possibly have done something or are guilty of doing whatever you were talking about, writing about, towards someone else, or they saw it happening or just felt it. You just need to take responsibility for your own healing. And it's okay to feel the way you feel and not have other people make you feel guilty about it. And again, it's on them. And remember that. So just send love and move on. It's incredibly important to establish clear emotional boundaries, or we can become so overwhelmed, so overstimulated by what's going on around us. And it's sometimes hard to function. So I'm going to tell you a few ways to begin the process of establishing healthier emotional boundaries. So one thing is, the most important thing I feel like is protect yourself from other people's stuff, right? So I can feel when someone is violating a boundary because my body personally, it tenses up, right? And I realize that my breathing is very shallow. I feel trapped. I feel small, helpless. The first thing I do is to remind myself to breathe. The act of focusing on my breath centers me and expands the energy around me in the space. I can think and act more clearly. When I feel myself becoming too overwhelmed, I try to immediately remove myself from the situation. Sometimes all it takes is a couple minutes to walk away and regain my balance. Other times, I've had to make the decision not to spend time with people who consistently drain my energy. Having a safe space to retreat, to practice mindfulness, meditation, breath work, or visualization, or, whatever. But just having a safe space to retreat, visualize a protective shield around yourself, or other methods can actually help restore balance when boundaries are invaded. Just find what works best for you. And then learn to communicate your boundaries in a clear and consistent way. Okay? For many, this can be almost the most difficult part of the process for various reasons. We don't like to appear confrontational. We're afraid that if we set clear boundaries for ourselves, the people in our lives will begin to resent us, right? However, learning to communicate boundaries effectively is necessary for healthy relationships. So one thing you can think about is like communicating, saying like, I'm not comfortable with that because, or whatever, or it just doesn't feel good to do this or that, right? Just these things, or I'm not okay with, I appreciate it if you wouldn't, please don't, and then just kind of go from there. If you cringed at the thought of using any of these phrases, you will be relieved to know that communicating your boundaries doesn't always have to be with words. You can also effectively communicate through use of nonverbal, right? Closing the door, take a step back. Shake your head, signaling with your hands can be less threatening ways of letting others know what you will and won't accept from them. And then be patient with the process. When I first realized that I was taking on negative emotions of others, I became extremely resentful and disgusted with them. Instead of taking responsibility for my role in allowing this dynamic to occur. So I blamed other people for every negative thing that happened in my life. Whenever you change a pattern, it is natural to feel resistance from inside, right? As well as the outside self. So you're going to probably feel resistance. As you practice, your ego may start to act up and make you feel like you are wrong in establishing boundaries. Others may also become resentful of your newfound assertiveness. They may be used to a certain dynamic with you in your relationship, and any change has the potential to cause conflict. So just remember, the biggest thing is be kind to yourself through the process, okay? As an empath and a healer, I don't want to leave anyone behind. However, keep in mind, you still have to set healthy boundaries. You cannot take responsibility for how others view you, especially the ones that don't know you or your story. They are responsible for how they view things or take things. But I will say this. You always speak your truth, okay? Always. When it comes to boundaries or anything that you have to say, just speak it. And then leave the past behind, because now you're setting boundaries. Just leave all that past and just live in the present. And this is one thing I do tell clients. Speak your truth. I will tell my teenage daughter and her friends the same thing. Speak your truth. Stop being afraid to say what needs to be said. Stop being afraid and stop holding back. Stop worrying about what people think about boundaries you set. It doesn't matter. These are your boundaries. You need to set them. This is how you strengthen yourself. But again, when I talk about speaking your truth, I talk about doing it with kindness and love. Just saying what you need to say, but doing it from the heart, from your voice, and using compassion, of course, right? One thing that helps is this affirmation. So this is something I have in my notes on my phone that I'll say over and over again when I'm having a hard time with boundaries or setting them myself. So I say this: I respect and love myself enough to recognize when something isn't healthy for me, and I am confident enough to set clear boundaries to protect myself. So you could write that down. You could just say that. I say it over and over in my mind, and it really does help me. The whole point is taking the first step to setting those boundaries up and really trusting that it's going to work, because it will. Others will start to understand where they can and can't push, right? So set them, make them clear, and really start healing, because once you set them, the healing comes in faster, right? And then just remember the affirmation. I respect and love myself enough to recognize when something isn't healthy for me. And I am confident enough to set clear boundaries to protect myself, right? I hope that this really helps you into understanding the importance of boundaries and how to set them properly. And there's other ways to do it, but these are just ways to help you. And I really, really thank you for joining and listening to this podcast. So thanks again for joining your energy esthetician on the Love Aligned podcast. Tune in for next week's show. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Love Aligned Podcast. Click on the link in my bio. Like, subscribe, comment, and then ring that bell. You can also private message me if you need remote or in-person healing. You can also email me at thelovealignedpodcast@gmail.com for questions as well. I hope you have the most beautiful day and happy healing.